This example shows how we can use TaskCentre for SAP Business One to create workflow-based authorizations. In this scenario, we've created a task that allows an employee to request an increase in a business partner's credit limit. This can then be authorized using the workflow capabilities of TaskCentre by a member of staff who has been given permission to do so. We're going to select one of our customers from the business partner master data and request a new credit limit via the user-defined field that we have created. This is because the credit limit field has been restricted to prevent any unauthorized changes. As we only want to authorize increases over £2,000, we've built a rule within the task to check the amount of the requested credit limit. In this case, we have a current credit limit of £2,000 and we're going to request an increase to £4,000. Once we update the business partner within SAP Business One, we can switch across to TaskCentre and see that the task has already been fired in the background, reacting to the new credit limit request. Now that the task has completed running, we can load the graphical task designer and show the tools that have been utilised to automate the first part of this process, creating the initial workflow. The event that triggered this task was the update of the business partner object. We have utilised the Business One specific event tool to monitor the database in real time for any new credit limit requests. We use the database query tool to get the relevant business partner information. After this step, we assign the credit limit request and use a decision tool to ensure that this is over £2,000. The next step creates a workflow job, a link to which is included in the alert that is formatted using the Formats HTML tool. This is finally sent using the Send Message tool. Now that we've shown the design of the task and briefly gone through the steps involved, we can switch across to our email application to view the results. We can see that TaskCentre has sent a formatted email containing relevant information and also a link to the workflow job that was created. Clicking on this link will load the web-based workflow via an internet browser that is created and maintained by TaskCentre. We can now see the workflow job on the screen. The form you can see can be completely customized to include your own logos and layout preferences, and also the information and inputs that are displayed. The form contains information related to the credit limit request, for example, the business partner name, balance, and the requested credit limit. You can see the requested credit limit is in an input box to allow us to change this if required before submitting the form. We can also choose to either accept or decline the request. In this case, we're happy with the £4,000, so we can simply click the Accept button to submit the workflow back to TaskCentre for SAP Business One to be processed. The workflow has been submitted, and we can see that TaskCentre has fired a task to react and process this submission. The second task that processes the workflow is completed, so we can again load the graphical task designer to show how it was created. The first step is the workflow job submission step, and this is configured to process any inputs from the workflow and fire the task. The next step uses the query tool to get and assign the current remarks held against the business partner, so we can amend these in the final step. We then use a decision tool to create two paths that will be followed depending on whether or not the requested credit limit was approved or not approved. If the request has been approved, we use the Formats HTML tool to format an approved message and then send this using the Send Message tool. This is to keep the original member of staff that made the request informed. The new credit limit is then written to the database, as well as resetting the Request Credit Limit field and amending the remarks to include update information for future reference. This is done using the SAP Business One Connector tool. If the credit limit request had not been approved, the steps followed are almost identical, except the formatted email informs the original member of staff that the request was in fact not approved. And we also simply update the remarks without changing the original credit limit. In both cases, we're using the SAP Business One Connector tool that tightly integrates with the Business One application to update the database. The tool uses the SAP Business One API, as you're not allowed to write directly to the database, and this ensures that any data written adheres to the business rules and that database is not corrupted in any way. Let's navigate away from the graphical designer in order to see the end results. In our email application, we can check for new messages in order to show the email that TaskCentre has sent, informing the member of staff that the credit limit was approved. If we also switch across to Business One, we can show the updated credit limit and remarks on the business partner record. You can see that the credit limit has been changed from £2,000 to £4,000 and that the request credit limit user defined field has been reset to 0. Also, if we click on the Remarks tab, we can see that these have also been appended. This task illustrates how we can easily add functionality to SAP Business One that does not currently exist, expanding its capabilities using the TaskCentre workflow tools. Not only can we automate this process, but we can also regulate and control how users interact with the system.